Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ladies of the PGS. I am your host, and of course, we have with us tonight Lorena Creole. How are you tonight, Lorena?
Well, I am doing great. I'm doing wonderful. It is chilly here in Florida, but I'm not going to complain because there is no snow and no ice at all. So it's all good.
Well, I have to agree with you on that one, and I have noticed that you are wearing something that looks like it's from Slytherin.
Yes, yes, I have a Slytherin sweater on, Slytherin crust representing my house because I am so excited about Hogwarts Legacy being released February 10th. February 7th, if you ordered on the PS4 or for the PC and you got the deluxe version. I cannot wait to play this game. It has been a long time coming and there's so much hype and buzz for it. I'm in the spirit of the release for it.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I can't remember the last Hogwarts game or anything like that with Harry Potter, Lorena. It's been a while and I am excited as well. There's a lot of buzz about it. I think it's going to be one of the most popular games this year, Lorena. I think once
Hmm.
gets released, as you said, it has multiple release dates depending upon platforms, and we already know it's selling like hotcakes. It's one of the highest selling and the most requested games on Steam, right, Lorena?
Yes,
um
absolutely.
those pre-orders are off the shelf. It's an instant success. We already know this, and it's going to be one incredible day, February 7th, as you said, for the release of Hogwarts Legacy, the first release. I can't wait. It's going to be exciting, Lorena. This is
Oh, it surely is. Ah, I can't wait.
So that's definitely something to look forward to. I love when a game that's coming out is going to be fantastic, and this game is going to be fantastic. And it's been so long, Lorena, since I've explored the halls of Hogwarts. How about you?
It's been a while, not since Lego Harry Potter. Have I traversed the halls of Slytherin and encroached onto Griffin in Gryffindor's common room and hung around Hogwarts and ran around Diagon Alley and all of that. But that was Lego. It looks like the Hogwarts universe and is actually set in the 1800s. So not only are we at Hogwarts, we are in a Victorian England period of time. So
Oh my
very
god.
different.
It sounds
Very
incredible.
different.
And Lorena, of course, I would have to go and see, well, who is the headmaster at Hogwarts at that time period? Who are the students that are famous? Was that gentleman, the one who had the Sorcerer's Stone? Was he at Hogwarts? He's probably not there at that time. Maybe it was too early, but I'd wonder who would be there 200 years ago. What famous witches and wizards would be there at that time? So it is very exciting to think of that. I played some of the earlier games, like actually the Sorcerer's Stone and all the ones that corresponded with some of the films early on,
Hmm.
and you did get to explore the grounds, but this one is the ultimate open. It's like an open world, right? Yeah.
Open open world. I mean, I'm excited about the potions class where you
Yes.
actually get to try the potions because you start the game as a fifth year
Okay.
student.
Okay.
So you have to take potions, you have to take, I think it's charms. I think you also defense against the dark arts,
Of
which
course.
I'm waiting for that. And you get to ride a darn hippogriff. Come on now. It's going to be great.
What more could you ask for? I know that there were a few of the Quidditch games. I never played the Quidditch ones, but I know that those are very popular. There's anything that comes out for this IP is a success. So I'm happy that it's coming out now, and it is wonderful. Certainly going to be checking out your channel on that day to see what's going on February 7th, guys. So please do check out Lorena's channel. I don't know whether I'll have my game system by then, but maybe I will. Who knows what's going to happen from then to now, Lorena?
I hope so. I hope so. So we can stream along together.
great. That would be the ultimate, and just a lot of fun. I think a lot of people would enjoy it. It certainly is enjoyable, and so much has happened with the parks now having so many beautiful versions of pretty much Hogwarts away, or let's say the Hogwarts universe away from Hogwarts at the parks. Universal has, Diagon Alley, so many things, Lorena. Look at, well, well, well,
Wand.
well, well. The wand
Yes.
is ready.
Yes, I have my wand ready and yet
Mhm.
more to collect.
Absolutely. This really is a great time to be a Harry Potter fan. And guys, for you, those of you out there, just please keep tabs on what both of us are doing in our community pages.
Mhm.
Next month is going to be fantastic for those of you who love Harry Potter and want to follow along on all of the great things that we're doing. And so that brings me, Lorena, to the first topic of tonight, Lorena. Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields, Lorena, one of the most incredible young stars, honestly, of our lifetime. She was
Mhm.
incredibly famous, incredibly popular. I remember those commercials where she would say, "Nothing comes between me and my Calvins." Do you remember that, Lorena?
I do remember that commercial. She was famous for that.
She really was. And, it was incredible to see something like that. Jeans were so popular at that time.
Very.
Everybody wanted a pair of Calvin Klein jeans. And, she was kind of, a huge advertiser of it. And, Brooke Shields is an incredible actress. And they've decided to do a documentary on her called Pretty Baby Brooke Shields. Lorena, this is being held at the Sundance Film Festival, which
Mhm.
apparently sold out super quick. Sometimes you can get some online access, but this year it was just the demand was so high. I couldn't even buy an online ticket. My mother's like, "Well, are we going to watch the movie?" I'm like, "I can't, Mom. We don't have access." She's like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Well, it's sold out." She's like, "I don't understand." I'm like, "No, Mom, it really just sold out." But she
Wow.
keeps asking me about it. But honestly, it's about time that we had something like this. It's from an award-winning director.
Mhm.
Who's done documentaries. She's won a lot of awards. I can't remember the lady's name. Let me see if I can get to the pages. I can't read it on the smaller page. But the person who made this documentary, Lorena, is, she is absolutely an incredible documentarian. And of course, her name's not on here. Oh, here she is. Lana Wilson she's an Emmy-winning director, and she has made a number of different documentaries, including Miss Americana, as well as The Departure. She got an independent film, excuse me, she won an Emmy, I can't speak, for best documentary for After Tiller.
Mhm.
So excited about when I talk about these new documentaries that are coming out. But certainly, Brooke Shields, she's stunningly beautiful, incredibly talented. This woman is incredibly intelligent. She went to Princeton, Lorena, got her
I
degree. I
remember
think,
that.
yeah, it was a big deal that she was going to university, and even just one that's literally down the road from us, right?
Mhm.
She studied, I think, French literature or French studies or something like that, and she certainly did very well in her academics. She's maybe, you know I guess, an incredible person. I don't even know how to describe her. But, I have to wonder about some of this, because I remember the one thing that my mother always said was that she was so young, and she was somewhat overexposed in the films when she was just a young girl, Lorena. Really, really young, underage exposure.
Mhm.
And it seemed like a lot of that was going on at that time period. But reading this information here, and I know I'm not following what I said. It says she was an 80s icon, guys. This is from the Sundance Film Festival's description about it. A child model before she came to prominence in Louise Malle's controversial film Pretty Baby. She was only 12 years old when she played a girl who was in a brothel. Like, it was controversial, guys. This was not, we don't normally see children in films like that, even now. So, and then of course, as I said, the commercials where she was like, "Well, nothing comes between me and my Calvins." And do you remember the Blue Lagoon, Lorena, and the frenzy around this film, Lorena? It was unbelievable. What do you remember about Brooke Shields and this time in her life where she just was everywhere. Everybody wanted a piece of Brooke Shields. What did you think about that? What do you remember about it in your impressions of it?
I remember, excuse me, Lord, pardon me. What I remember most about the Blue Lagoon was my parents basically saying I was not going to be able to see it. So that's the one thing that I do remember. But I do also remember like hearing through the news or looking at articles about how young Brooke Shields was to be in such a sexually charged movie. I mean, back then I didn't know what the controversy exactly was, except that it seemed like it was too mature of a role for her to be in, because she, at such a young age, she splattered all over fashion magazines, and I used to like devour fashion magazines like Elle, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar. You'd see her, the Calvin Klein ads. You would see her. There were a couple of other ones. I can't believe I can't remember them because I used to see all of them. But she seemed to have the ideal life of a teenager. It's like what teenage girl wouldn't want to be. You know, a model wouldn't want to seem to have all of this at her disposal, but there was always that air of caution of she is too young to be doing this. Why are her parents letting her do this? And it's not a very good role model for young girls, to see, considering the type of situation that's being put in. And John Jr. Jackson, you brought up exactly a point that I was also thinking about with Jodie Foster playing a hooker and taxi driver, how young she was. Now that I didn't know about until maybe 10 years ago, I found out about that. But about Brooke Shields, I did know with respect to her and how young and how young she was. It was almost, I would say, kind of sad in a way that they would put her in a movie in this particular context, and she's just a young girl.
Yeah, it was shocking, honestly. And, unfortunately, it seemed like at that time period, for some odd reason, a lot of this was going on. You mentioned Jodie Foster, you and Tom
Mhm.
mentioned Taxi Driver. And of course, that was a very popular film. Certainly, it was one that is considered one of the best films ever made. And yet there is that element. I mean, Jodie Foster looks like a little girl in the film.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it is kind of overexposed. And it did kind of make me wonder, why does it seem that at that time period, I'm not saying it doesn't occur at other times, but it
Mhm.
seemed like there was just this influx of this happening at that time period of really talented actors, young actors who really, this was completely out of their control, Lorena. We know that as children, as young teenage children, they had no idea what was really going on. This is not a decision that they made. You're a minor, so you can't really make those kinds of decisions for yourself. So there is that. But it is interesting that this director chose to focus on Brooke Shields. Now she still acts. She's had a fantastic career, Lorena. I don't think
Mhm.
there's ever been a period of time where she hasn't done some kind of a project. It's very interesting that she had a great career on television in comedy. She's really done a lot in her career. So, she certainly has, as far as I'm concerned, done the rounds in regards to entertainment. She could probably do anything she wanted with the level of intelligence that she has too. I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised that, she invented something that, like, or negotiated world peace or something like that. Because if anybody could do it, it would be her. She's just an incredible person all around. But it made me start to think about something that I saw recently. And you and I had kind of been talking about this, of course, before. And what it had to do with was another, it's not exactly the same decade, but it's very close in time period. It had to do with another film that I'm sure you've seen that's kind of
Mhm.
become staple for Romeo and Juliet. For anybody who remembers Olivia Hussey, a famous actress who played
Mm-hmm.
a Romeo and Juliet rendition that was incredibly popular. Probably everybody in high school has seen this version of Romeo
Mm-hmm.
because that's what they show in school, right, Lorena?
Exactly. That's where I first saw it.
And honestly, it is a great movie that depicts Romeo and Juliet in a realistic manner. They are very young, it is true, but the controversy stems over the fact that there were nude scenes in this, and apparently Olivia Hussey and her co-star, who, even though they've kind of spoken about it since that time, are
Mm-hmm.
suing over this, Lorena. This is obviously a lot of laws have changed and there's statutes of limitations and different things like that. Were you surprised
Mm-hmm.
to hear that, these co-stars who were very, very young and overexposed, were you surprised to hear that they were going to be suing now, so many years later after the film was made?
I wasn't surprised to hear it, and here's why. Do you remember the first album Nirvana put out?
Yes.
Do you remember the Naked Baby Underwater?
Yes.
Okay. That baby in his, I guess he's like in his, I guess he was like in his 20s or 30s, sued Nirvana and won
Hmm.
for claims of child exploitation. So if that hadn't have happened, I probably would have been surprised by this. But since that happened and now that's precedent, I'm not surprised. I'd like to say that the 80s, when you think of like child stars, you kind of saw some of them in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, but it seems like from what I recall watching the movies, the 70s and 80s and early 90s, I would say, was a huge explosion, I think, in what happened with child stars. Stories that Drew Barrymore would tell about when she was young and in the industry and how she was exploited. Corey, oh gosh, no, I'm thinking of
Corey
the
felt.
wrong Corey Feldman. He talked about what was going on in Hollywood, and so many other stars who were children, excuse me, would tell what happened back then. I don't know if it's because there obviously was a lack of protective measures that were put in place, and they just saw children as many adults. I would say in a way which is not fair, at all. But I think the more that these actors who are now very grown are basically calling Hollywood out about that particular behavior and holding them to account by doing these lawsuits.
Yeah, it seems like they are trying to hold someone accountable, let's say, and kind of call out certain things. And I'm just going to reiterate the situation with Brooke Shields, because when you are that young, and someone tells you that you have to do a specific scene that's like that, you're not really making that choice as a minor. You can't. It's kind of not, it is unfortunate that they're being put in this position, but here it says that they, Hussey and Whiting were saying they have suffered emotional damage and mental anguish for decades, and that each had careers that did not reflect the success of the movie. I think it is very interesting. And I know that while this is a staple film and probably always will be,
Hmm.
the idea of walking in as an actor and maybe not even realizing that they had to do this, I don't think there is a child that even thinks about a scene like that. It's different if you say you want to be an actor. I've heard children say things like this, but I've never heard any of them say that they want to do an explicit scene. That's not something that I've ever heard any child ever say, and they wouldn't, because they're not thinking about that. So it is kind of interesting to look at this. Of course, this is a movie that is supposed to depict two young lovers,
Hmm.
and they needed to find young people to play the roles, but I don't think we're going to be heading down this direction anymore, Lorena, with looking at this. Of course, at the time, there was no such thing as an intimacy coordinator. It's $500 million. That doesn't seem like a lot of money, Lorena, to me. And it says that
Mm,
it said this lawsuit was filed under a California law temporarily suspending the statute of limitations for child abuse. Are we going to see more Hollywood stars come forward, especially after this one, which was, kind of mind blowing, especially because of the time
mhm.
consideration. And, just even this film, maybe one of the most popular films of the 60s. What do you think?
Well, it was indeed a very popular film, and again, I just think because these protections were not in place, they just treated these children as many adults. And with some of their parents, especially when it comes to Hollywood and the Hollywood film television scene, you have a lot of these parents who I almost want to say they're like stage moms or like dance moms, and they kind of want to push their children into this particular spotlight. And when you don't have a parent who is being protective, like, no, we're not going to put, my child in that particular situation, unfortunately they get exploited this way. I mean, I keep going back to Drew Barrymore because I would hear her tell all of these stories, and she had a massive falling out with her mother, um, because of that, with what had happened. So yeah, it's I do think that it's kind of right now people are starting to uncover that. And like you were saying, now they have intimacy coordinators. There seem to be more protections in place, for minors who are in film and television. That is a good thing, and I also think that it's good that there's a legal remedy that some of these adults who were exploited as children, and these films did make money off of them, money at the time at the box office. Think about, physical media, streaming, how many places are still making money off of their exploited image. So hopefully they will get some kind of compensation and closure.
Yeah, I hope so too, Lorena. And I think that this might be a step in the right direction in a lot of ways. If we remember, I think it was Jackie Coogan. I could be wrong on this, but was he the one who, when he worked as a child, none of the money was kept for him. So when he became an adult, there was no money left, and there was a law, that was put in place that said a certain amount of a child's revenue has to be saved for them as an adult. Maybe this is a step in the right direction so that things like this can
Mm,
happen going forward. And we won't see situations where, stars are in a position where they feel that they have to go ahead and sue after this. But
mhm,
certainly it was something that I think that the thing that most surprised me about it was only because for so many years, both actors had spoken about the scenes and people were concerned and kept asking them about it. Well, what did you think about these scenes when you were younger and you were in it? And the actor
mhm,
was in a position where they had to defend themselves, because what do you say as a young adult? There's no recourse, but later on you suddenly realize it's like that decision was not something that they probably would have made or should even have been in a position to have to do. So I kind of understand and I feel for them because
yeah,
maybe at least at this point they can kind of put it to rest and just kind of accept what has happened. But hopefully now with this coming out, it'll prevent any kind of abuse like this. But it is something to
exactly.
think about, Lorena. We this is certainly, we're seeing different things. As you said, like with Corey Feldman, I didn't think anything was going to happen after, even though he was so candid of
Yes,
what had happened and the different things. And it was almost shocking. It was Larry King, right? He was on Larry King,
I think it
and
was Larry King.
he spoke about it, and a lot of people dogged Corey Feldman for just being honest and truthful about what was happening. So hopefully this will change things, Lorena. And there is kind of another story that when I first heard about it, I didn't quite know what to make of it, because it was just something, honestly, I took it for granted for so long. And I think a lot of people have pretty much made their livelihoods off of,
Mhm.
kind of these open gaming licenses that became sort of a staple a long time ago. And what it really is, and I'm not going to do a very good job of describing this, but about 20 years ago, Ryan Dacey, who's the former VP of Wizards of the Coast, created this open gaming license. And
Mhm.
pretty much what it meant was that and more or less that people could develop and use, they could kind of use the rules, not the D&D name, but the rules of how the game is played, to develop
Mhm.
more type, or let's say additional types of products that you could purchase and use. So out of a 20-year period, Lorena, so many people have gone and used this open game license. And it's pretty much their livelihoods, only to find that, right now things are kind of changing because the current owner, I think it's Hasbro, um,
Mhm. Yes.
wants to nullify Wizards of the Coast's open gaming license. And what that could mean is a number of things, actually. What it inevitably could mean is that people will be expected to pay possibly royalties or all
Mhm.
sorts of different scenarios that they were not expecting to be responsible for. And I had kind of mentioned, I said, I bet you it's because the person who was at the company isn't there anymore. And sure enough, he isn't. I think it's a retired vice president, Heath from Tabletop Gaming and Heath's Geekverse. Sent me a very long email about this as soon as this had broke, but I didn't quite understand what was going on until Sunday, Lorena, in the morning when I was hosting Sunday brunch. And I realized, and of course, like I've seen something about it on Clownfish. I'm sure you have already
Mhm.
prior
Yes.
to this. They've been following it very carefully. To be honest with you, it just seemed to get worse and worse because once people discovered that there might be some sort of cease of this open game license, it really was quite a shock. They were given a few days to adjust to it, and the response was very negative from fans and pretty much people who have maybe built their whole careers over this thing, Lorena. And I guess Hasbro went ahead and tried to kind of calm people down over what may be happening, but from what I understand, it was a kind of a not the best foot forward for the company. And right now things are quite in an this kind of neither here nor there situation. I just can't even believe it's happening in the sense. And, if you go onto YouTube and search this, it's hundreds of thousands of videos on this, Lorena. I've never seen anything like this before. If they sent out some apology letter to the fans, and the fans are like, this is not really the way that you would do this. And, certainly
No,
not.
it was a non-apology apology.
Why now? And, the thing about it, Lorena, is that this is coming right off of the heels of the Dungeons and Dragons movie coming out. And people are talking about possibly even boycotting the film as a result of what's going on here. Lorena, this is insane. I never thought this would be coinciding with Dungeons and Dragons right now. The movie, I never thought any of this would be happening. What are your thoughts on this? What have you heard about this insane situation that's going on right now that really has a lot of people really concerned?
Well, let me preface this by saying I have never played Dungeons and Dragons. I just was not into it. However, I had friends who were into it, so I kind of have a general idea of how the game goes. As for with the open gaming license, I didn't know what that was until I found out about a certain voice actor or that I absolutely love because he does two voices for two anime characters that I love. One is Levi Ackerman from Attack on Titan, and the other one is Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yes.
That voice actor is Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer, I believe, is the owner of Critical Role. Now, Critical Role is a web series where voice actors basically act out Dungeons and Dragons. That's how I know about it. As for why they are pushing to do this now, the stuff that got on my radar was the whole thing about people saying that Dungeons and Dragons was racist, which is BS, and all of the quote unquote modifications that they were trying to make to it to make it more quote unquote inclusive, which is not about inclusion, it's about control. Now that Hasbro has it, I'm thinking some bean counter who has no idea what's going on, who's never played a tabletop game. And even if you've never played it, I've never played it, but I have much respect for people who do. So I understand how big that is. So obviously these people are so out of touch that they go and make a move like this. And not only is it about royalties and all of that, but the ability to police your speech, police your content, that say, guess what? We deem your content to be quote unquote offensive. So under the OGL, we are going to fine you. That's the other thing that's going on. If it was just royalties per se, I think people would seriously have a problem with it, but it wouldn't be the extreme outrage on top, justifiably so, of trying to control what players can say or do with developing their own content with using this license.
Yeah, you make a good point on this. It seems like it's affecting a lot of elements that were never any concern at all when you were playing this game. I've played a lot of tabletop games, and I've I have to be honest with you, Lorena. I have friends who develop tabletop games, and it's just a natural thing. You want to start to go into another area. It doesn't exist, so then you develop that tabletop game. But the
Mm-hmm.
mechanics that everybody knows from Dungeons and Dragons is what people are using, and then you kind of have these rules and different things in place so everybody understands how to play the game. So it's really essential to kind of have that as that benchmark when you're wanting to create a new world. Okay, I don't have to go ahead and recreate every single element. I can just create this genre and let's say, or one area if I want to. It's
Mm-hmm.
really a shame that this is happening at this moment when tabletop games are more popular now than ever, Lorena. And I have to say, I'm just very surprised at how all this is going down so quickly. I don't know what they were expecting, what Hasbro may have been expecting from all of these sort of developers, because you know what were they thinking, that people were just going to go ahead and say, yeah, okay, no problem, we'll comply, if we make a certain amount, here's the money. But there have been some developers who were always leery about the fact that they could never truly own everything, so to speak, because it
Mm-hmm.
was on this open gaming license. And so I think it's really very telling that the way that they've handled this, knowing how the response has been, the way that they handled it was so poorly. They are very, very out of touch with what's important to these gamers. They don't understand why people are even doing this. As you said, they
Mm-hmm.
probably, maybe they do play, but they don't understand what's important to these players, what specific things are important to them. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the fact that they felt they did a good job by responding this way, and it only made things worse, certainly shows that they still are very much in the dark about this, and they feel that they have the upper hand. They are maybe even convinced they do. Now, Heath's Geekverse has interviewed Ryan Dancy, who is the former VP of Wizards of the Coast, who actually
Mm-hmm.
created an open gaming license, from what Heath has said. And you can
Mm-hmm.
check out his interview on Geek's channel, on Heath's Geekverse channel. But I did want to mention it because a lot of people who have made their livelihoods, and I know I said this earlier, they've made their livelihoods on this, Lorena. This is their bread and butter
Mm-hmm.
um, in developing their games. It really is something that, is quite appalling, in the sense of kind of setting years and years of work into something, now wondering what is going to happen to it. Now, in this article, it really focuses on creators and fans having ire from this open gaming license change. And Some groups are saying, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and do our own rule set and develop it completely new from scratch. And I think that might be something that many people are going to have to do just in general now. This is something that, but you know, something I don't know, depending upon what people are banking on, because Lorena, some people are planning this stuff out 2 years in advance before something gets released. It could be, you know, either from a crowdfunding thing. There's all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things that people are doing. I know that some people develop accessories to go with some of these games that are very specific for playing the
Mm-hmm.
game. So there's a lot writing on this here. And in the article here, they talk about how, you know, essentially what they're going to do is develop a new rule set. And then, of course, you know, I think, you know, the idea of them asking people to implement something in a few days, that's disrespectful.
It
And
completely is. It completely is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, keep going, keep going.
It really is, because it reminds me of, and we've seen this time and time again in the geekverse, especially when people take over certain comic properties and treat the fans with utter disrespect. This is utter disrespect. This is the case, and I keep saying this just because I'm working in corporate America. You get some bean counter that doesn't understand engineering and just puts out all these dictates, and none of them make sense. This doesn't make sense to piss off this much goodwill for people who've been using this for 20 years. And for what? To try to realize some kind of income you think that you're going to get. And I honestly don't think that they believe people would just say, forget it, I just won't deal with this anymore. And you will only be left, and I'm just theorizing, you'll only be left with, let's say, the bigger outfits, like Critical Role, who can throw their weight enough around to influence Hasbro. But let's just say your garden variety gamer out there who's been using this for 20 years and make up their own stuff, they're not going to be able to abide by this at
No,
all.
no, it is something that is unrealistic, and it was a leaked report. But however, the impact was, it might as well have been the real thing at this point, because
Yes.
you know, the impact, it feels as if this was, you know, just something that they press released. You know, and I think that honestly, Lorena, I don't even think that Hasbro could handle all the companies or all the people that may have businesses based on this. It might be in the millions. You know, we just don't know. I don't even know whether there's a collective number of people involved in this. It says a 20 to 25% royalty to be paid to Wizards by licensed users making in excess of 750,000 a year, while giving Wizards a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license. What?
Go up. What's got me stunned is
Yes. You want me
the
to look up more?
sentence before that.
Yes.
Reportedly, the new license, called OGL 1.1, makes numerous revisions to the D&D policy, including adding a requirement that all creators register any products they're selling with Wizards of the Coast.
That sounds like a
So,
cash.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Register it for what? So they can make money off of it and not give you anything?
And, you know, some people have said that the $750,000 cap is low when you're talking about the overhead for a game and what you have to pay going out, you know, the amount of money it takes to develop. It might be a couple $1,000,000 to develop some of these games. So it's
Mhm.
essentially anybody who develops a game, you know, falls into this category. $750,000 is not a huge amount to make on games like this. There's distribution, there's all sorts of stuff, advertisement, and other things that come up. It's not a whole bunch of money when you talk about maybe 12 or 13 people who are developing the game and you split that between all of them. It's not a whole bunch of cash, Lorena. it's really kind of, disappointing to see this happening. And here we were talking about how they had said their response about it's not going away, but I think we all know. And there was one particular commenter who, before I kind of wrap this up, who mentioned that he suspected this is where they were going all along, because he felt that D&D wanted to move away from this and go more towards an app-based universe, if you will, where they have more control. Obviously, they would have more control over something that's technology-based. You wouldn't be able to type in certain things or do certain plays. And that kind of removes a lot of the freedom of the game and kind of the adventure away from the game. And I don't know. I mean, I somehow think that when you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, this is an extreme adventure. It's not sort of like going down the park and going for a small little hike. You're
No.
expecting to have adventures that are unbelievable and timeless, unforgettable. But if you can't even walk out of the dungeon without saying, excuse me, yes, I'm so sorry for bumping into you, I think that we could go into some dangerous territory with this. But I did just want to say that I hope this works out somehow. I just was so surprised by it, as I'm sure you were, and a lot of people who are listening to this. Goodness gracious, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I just hope there's some way that this does work out. It is still up in the air. People are terrified of this, Lorena. That's the word that I would use for this. It created terror in the community, and rightfully so, of people who are dedicated, hardworking developers to have to go through this. This is a nightmare, and it stings a little bit. There's a little bit of sting to it because they do have an upper hand, I guess, in a sense, being a larger company. It feels like the big companies is possibly knowing that people don't have the ability to kind of defend themselves in this regard. What could they do? What's the recourse? So that's the thing that kind of makes me mostly concerned about this, is someone who has invested even more recently a couple $1 million in developing a game that they think is going to come out in 2024. Now they don't even know where to go with this. So I don't know. So I just wanted to say, anybody who's out there who's going through this, we hear you, and I just hope it works out. Heath, as I said, from Heath's Geekverse, brought it to my attention. Lorena, you also have friends of yours as well who brought it to your attention. Anybody who's going through this, we feel your pain. I hope it works out for everybody, because this is just unbelievable and shocking. And I just hope that you guys, it works out for the best. So, oh my gosh, Lorena, I can't even, I can't. This is, I don't know. But all right, the final topic for tonight. I couldn't even believe I was kind of looking at this and even contemplating that this might be a good idea. But the more I thought about this topic, Lorena, the more I started to realize that the potential for this, or even the potential of even talking about this, I hope I have the right one. Yes. Why do I see? Oh, okay. They're talking about a computer program. I think this is very interesting. It's an article in Forbes where Mark, is writing the idea that, this is still a viable option. And then, what I started to think about, Lorena? What I started to think about was, if I had a choice between having, let's say hypothetically, if this happened and they asked Henry Cavill to be in this, if I had the option of having Henry Cavill in a series where he played Superman versus one or two movies, I think I'd take the series and be very happy with it. Or even all these characters that I don't necessarily want to see these characters, necessarily these versions, go away. Maybe they'll write something even better than what we've seen. Is it realistic to even be dreaming about this? Is it a possibility? And could it work?
That is an interesting question. I know I love Henry Cavill. As far as I'm concerned, Henry Cavill is Superman. And this is from somebody who is not a big DC fan at all. The Snyderverse, I could take her leave. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's just kind of, it's just kind of there. My only thing is, trusting Netflix. Because one thing that you also have to remember is that Henry Cavill is involved with the Highlander reboot. He's also executive producing Warhammer 40K as well for Amazon. I don't really trust Netflix that way to just hand it over. It will be different if they were like, okay, Zack Snyder, and they may do this because Zack Snyder is shooting Rebel Moon for Netflix, which, oh my god, it looks freaking amazing. So
Mhm.
if they say, to Zack Snyder, okay, Netflix, they say, okay, you know what, we get the Snyderverse, you take it, see what you do with it. Um, that could work out well, or it could be a train wreck. I really would not want to have the Snyderverse out there in the ether without Zack Snyder attached to it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, say, if you just give the Snyderverse over to some director or producer who has no clue what they're doing, you could get a Snyderverse version of Cowboy Bebop live action. And if you ask any anime fan, or just like live action adaptations of anime with Netflix involved, no bueno. No bueno.
Yeah, it is something to think about. It seems, I think it's very funny. I think that if I think that if we were looking at this from the point of view of what's going to become of this
Mhm.
entire, group of superheroes that we
Mhm.
know, and of course the current Superman, he, like we said before, he was in a film just last year, like literally 6 months
Black
ago.
Adam, yes.
So it's not like he can't throw that uniform back on. It's not like they could pull in Black Adam, I guess, if they wanted to. It's not like they couldn't pull in a bunch of other stars. They all were at the end of the Peacemaker as well. So it's not like this couldn't happen. I don't feel that it's so far fetched in a sense. Um, I know it's not happening right now, but or not, probably no one's even talking about it other than this article. But I
Mhm.
think it was very interesting that, he thought this could be an option, because I think that he thinks it's still a viable piece of property. You wouldn't have to overly advertise it, because anybody who likes the Snyderverse would jump on this. There are a ton of fans who want this to continue. I
Mhm.
think it's very interesting to even entertain this thought. And, it made me wonder, would there be other companies willing to invest in this? Something that I thought would be gone forever. It hadn't even occurred to me that anybody would want to revive this at this point, because my interpretation of it is that
Mhm.
if one person says no, we're not doing this, then maybe it's dead forever, but that may not be the case. And so, it added even more to my uncertainty and my denial, Lorena, that
Mhm.
Cavill is not coming back. I'm still in the denial phase, as I've told you, until I see another
I
super.
I don't blame you. I mean, in a way, I am too. I'm just like, he's coming back, right? He's coming back, right? Even though it's just like, unfortunately, no, no, he's not coming back. I just, I don't even know if Netflix. It's How would I put this? Again, I'm speaking as a normie. Okay,
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned, there seems to be just this splintering of what's going on with the DC characters. It's just like, do I go here? Do I look at the Snyderverse? Do I look at this? Do I look at that? Is the Snyderverse going to be a viable? We'll put it this way: is it going to make money on Netflix? And that may be the question. Does this property carry enough gravitas to make it worthwhile taking over? I mean, I could see them possibly doing a movie, maybe, but then again, I don't trust Netflix. That's my thing. I do not trust Netflix that way, especially if Zack Snyder is not involved with it.
Yeah, I think he would have to be
He would
involved with
have to
this.
be.
And I think that this is a very creative piece of writing, honestly, trying to figure out where it could fit in, because I think we know, or at least suspect, that it's not going to fit in where it was before. And so,
Hmm.
and that's okay. That's all right. Times change and situations change, and we know it's not going to be the same from year to year. It's been a long time since the last film. So this is something to think about and something to ponder. And perhaps a change is needed, but just not the way that we've been told that change is going to occur. So I think it is very interesting to kind of think, well, how could it work? Certainly, Mark Hughes has been thinking about it, because he wrote this article that certainly put a lot of thought into this as to where it might fit. And I think it's very creative for him to even do this. Obviously he writes about entertainment all the time, but it
Hmm.
truly was something that I hadn't contemplated and hadn't thought about. If there is another place, is there a place for them, for these other superheroes to go, since they're not coming back in the way that we know them? So that was something that I hadn't thought about. We already know that there are ideas. There was an idea presented, so we know that the idea is out there, that there are probably scripts that were presented. So it's
Hmm.
certainly not lacking in creativity or intention. It's just wanting to invest in it and execute it is where it needs to find a home. So that is a thought as well. And then it would make sense to kind of have, if we're going to be going with, let's say, a mature Superman, let's say a
Hmm.
mature group of heroes. Maybe we would want more story time. Maybe we would need that more individualized storytelling, but it could be done in a format where everybody could be accommodated and we don't feel
Hmm.
slighted. Like, for example, Cyborg's story was never finished. And I felt like we needed to find out a little bit more what's going on with that character. So many, because the setup that they had didn't, it's not that it didn't work well. The relationship was bad, or bruised, if you will. So maybe
Hmm.
going and starting in another place might be the ideal thing. So I can see where he was coming from and why he suggested kind of going to another place, but keeping the dream alive, if you will.
Mm, yeah, I can see why. And it's like, and I understand, the heart of it. But when you're making things like this and you want to make money from it, for like me, a normie, it's just like, okay, you don't have Cavill, you don't have Gal Gadot, you don't have Jason Momoa. I
Mhm.
remember them from the Snyderverse.
Mhm.
Why aren't they back? And that's kind of like what would break it for me. If you recast it, to me it's not this to me it's just not the it's not the same. So it's like, I understand the heart of where it's coming from, but I don't see Netflix even trying to do this unless it's going to give them a big return on their money. And who knows what kind of shenanigans Warner Brothers would pull.
Yeah, you got a good point with that. But it is certainly fun to talk about and entertain the idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love the thought of it, and I'm sure a lot of people have looked at this article and said, "Oh, that's not
Hmm.
possible." But you know something, Lorena? After 2022, we saw so many things come and go, and then come and go again. I am not ruling anything out. I'm just keeping an open mind when it comes to the way entertainment has been going. It's kind of taught me. That's why I'm looking forward to Cocaine Bear. I am keeping an open mind about everything, Lorena.
Hmm.
Certainly, this is going to be, I have a feeling 2023 is going to be an even more extraordinary year for entertainment than 2022. So, Lorena, with that being said, where can people find you?
Well, folks, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. And of course, you can find me on YouTube during various live streams and videos, of course, with myself and with her of Positive Fandom as well.
Yes, exactly, guys. And please do like and subscribe to Lorena Creole's channel. Like and subscribe to my channel, Positive Fandom, if you enjoyed tonight's program. And of
Hmm.
course, our network for those of you who are here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find me here on the Burnett Network, on Lorena Creole's channel, sometimes on the 1/6 Scale Man Network. And of course, on Positive Fandom, which is my channel, tomorrow night as well. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for Ladies of the PGS tonight. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson. We are all goof people. And everybody out there, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always please do remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.
Bye.